Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light to guide my way.
As we talk about symbolism in prophecy, let's look at these grand descriptions and see how they are a superlative language. A superlative is an expression that takes a thought to its highest level. The best-known passage of Scripture is a verse of superlative thought. Every expression within John 3:16 may be understood to be the greatest of something. God is the greatest being. So is the greatest degree. Loved is the greatest disposition of benevolence. The world is the greatest number of people, and so forth. When we contemplate symbolism in many passages of Scripture, we see a graphic depiction of God's will in a grand way. I like to describe it as the creation of a picture by the use of words. As we sometimes say, one picture is worth 1,000 words. When these word pictures are painted by the prophets, God gives us an eyeful, and we're expected to feel the very events they foretold, whether we understand how that will happen or not. We find this type of language used in foretelling the beginning of the church. Joel wrote, "And I will display wonders in the sky and on the earth, blood, fire, and columns of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." Joel 2:30 and 31. Beginning at Acts 2, verse 16, Peter quoted Joel as fulfilled in the events of Pentecost. These are expressions of a memorable event that is momentous in nature. If we aren't careful, we're going to actually look for blood, fire, and smoke, along with the sun being darkened and the moon turning to blood. It's important that we understand that this kind of language was common for prophets to use in describing momentous events. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at Isaiah's description of the distress that the Assyrians would bring upon Jerusalem. "From the Lord of hosts you will be punished with thunder and earthquake and loud noise, with whirlwind and tempest and the flame of a consuming fire." Isaiah 29:6. Just as the distress of Jerusalem in Isaiah was not describing features that literally appeared, the description in Joel was not presenting literal astronomical events. Something would literally occur, but the symbols conveyed the fame and power, not a list of literal details. They would be known far and wide, just as all would know if the sun had been darkened or the moon was turned to blood. In Isaiah chapter 34 and verse 4, God described his wrath against evil nations as the heavens being dissolved and rolled together as a scroll. The sky wasn't going to literally roll up, but these descriptions symbolized monumental actions. These events would not take place in a corner, out of sight and unknown to humanity. Knowledge of these things would be far and wide, like an event in the heavens. When Amos speaks of the cows of Bashan in chapter 4 and verse 1, he refers to the rich who feed on the poor and needy. The image is powerful as they're pictured grazing on the adversity of others. Notice that there aren't actually any cows. It's greedy, hungry people feeding on others. Amos also said the Lord would roar from Zion, and the top of Carmel shall wither. That's in chapter 1 and verse 2. The reader can imagine the ferocity, and the reason may be seen in the woes pronounced on Israel in the remainder of the book of Amos. It's of vital importance that we understand that the symbols used in prophecy can never actually appear in the fulfillment. If something in a prophecy is found in the fulfillment, it's not a symbol. It was intended to be literal. So beware of expecting everything in every prophecy to be found in the process of fulfillment. Symbols always represent something else or present a concept to be understood when the prophecy does reach fulfillment. Well, that's all we have time for now. In our next video, we're going to see how Old Testament prophecies are sometimes reused in New Testament prophecy. I mentioned this briefly in video 64, and I need to cover it a little more fully before we go on to study some important prophecies more deeply. I hope you'll join me then.